Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never expected anything interesting to happen while working at a dollar store. That was kind of the appeal of it. Back in 2014, I was in a rough place financially. I had dropped out of community college halfway through my second semester because I couldn't afford both tuition and rent. I had just moved into a cheap, rundown apartment in a town called Redfield, upstate New York. It was one of those places where the air always smelled like old wood and diesel fuel, and where everyone either knew each other or didn't care enough to ask. I landed a part-time job at the local Dollar Tree a couple blocks away. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a job. Minimum wage, long hours on my feet, customers who treated me like furniture. I didn't complain. I just needed to hold on until I could save enough for something better. Most of the time I worked the closing shift alone. It wasn't as bad as it sounds. We were open until 10 p.m., and the store was small, just 10 aisles total, a little back room for storage, and one of those sad break rooms with a microwave that made everything taste like cardboard. Evenings were usually dead after about 8:30. It gave me time to restock shelves, clean up, and then wait out the final hour at the front counter. Quiet was fine by me. But one night, I still think about it even now, years later, quiet became terrifying. It was a Thursday. I remember because it had been overcast all day and the weather was weirdly warm for October. The kind of muggy, sticky warmth that feels like it shouldn't be there, like the air itself didn't want to be touched. I was scheduled 3 p.m. to close. It had been a completely normal shift. The usual crowd came in after school. Kids buying candy, teenagers acting cool, older ladies stocking up on off-brand paper towels. By 9:30, I hadn't seen a customer in almost 20 minutes. I was sitting behind the counter playing a game on my phone. I always kept the volume low just in case someone walked in. That night, I was deep into one of those mindless time-killer games, match 3 puzzles or something. I was zoning out hard when I heard a noise. Clatter. It came from somewhere in the middle of the store, loud enough to snap me out of my game. I paused, sat up straighter, and listened. It sounded like something had fallen. Maybe a plastic bin or a stack of paper plates. I looked up toward the aisles, but from the counter I couldn't see more than the first few sections. I hesitated. I wasn't scared yet, just curious, maybe a little annoyed. Shelves were cheap and stockers didn't always line things up right. Still, I stayed put. About 3 minutes later, another sound. Thump. Louder this time. I jumped a little, staring toward the back of the store. This time it sounded heavier. I squinted, checking if anyone had walked in. The bell above the door hadn't rung. That's when it hit me. There was no one in the store. The last customer had left 10 minutes before. The front door never opened again. I would have heard it. Suddenly, the quiet felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. I set my phone down and stood up. My sneakers squeaked slightly on the floor. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small and thin against the fluorescent lights. Nothing. No footsteps, no reply. I walked slowly toward where I thought the sound came from. Aisle 6, maybe 7. My heart was beating faster than it should have. When I turned into aisle 7, I saw it. 2 items on the floor. Aluminum foil trays and a package of holiday napkins. Not heavy things, but not the kind to fall unless someone touched them. I bent down, picked them up, and looked around. The shelves were full and neat. Nothing else looked disturbed. I placed them back, straightened a crooked row of forks, and stood there for a second. Something didn't feel right. Then, another crash. This time from the opposite end of the store. Loud, something plastic, maybe toys. I froze. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. "Is someone in here?" I called again, louder this time. No answer. I knew I had to check. Even if it was just a kid hiding, I had to. I moved quietly toward the toy section. aisle 2. When I turned the corner, I stopped cold. There, in the middle of the aisle, was a toy truck, bright red, flipped upside down. Behind it, a stuffed unicorn had been thrown off the shelf, one of its button eyes missing. I stared at it for a long second. Then I heard something. Footsteps. Quick, light, deliberate, running. But not toward me. Away, toward the front of the store. I bolted after them, sneakers slapping against tile. When I rounded the corner, I froze again. There was a man standing behind the checkout counter. My counter. One knee up on the shelf, both hands yanking at the register. He was trying to open it. I watched, frozen, as he jerked the drawer, slammed his hand on it, then tried to lift the whole thing. "Hey, stop! I'm calling the cops!" I shouted, backing away. He didn't even flinch. He jumped down, ran to the second register, also locked. "I said I'm calling!" I yelled again, fumbling for my phone. My hands were shaking. The man finally gave up. He threw something, maybe a pen, then bolted straight for the door. The bell above it rang as he yanked it open and vanished into the night. I ran to the door and locked it immediately. I didn't care that it was still 15 minutes before closing. We were done. I stood there, staring out at the dark parking lot, trying to steady my breathing. The flickering light outside illuminated just a patch of sidewalk. I couldn't see where he went. I called 911. Police arrived about 10 minutes later. I told them everything. They took notes, checked the store, asked for the camera footage. My manager followed up the next morning. The man was never found. He never came back, as far as I know. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The worst part wasn't that he tried to rob us. It was realizing he'd been in the store the whole time. He must have been hiding somewhere, maybe crouched between shelves, maybe in the stock room, just watching, waiting. That thought still haunts me. How close he was, how silent he stayed, and how I never knew he was there until he wanted me to. I quit a few weeks later. I told them it was because I found something closer to home, but the truth was I didn't feel safe anymore. Even now, when I walk past a Dollar Tree, even in daylight, I feel that same chill creep over me. That kind of quiet, the kind that hides something and never really leaves you. I wasn't someone who went to Dollar Tree very often, not because I thought I was too good for it or anything like that. It just wasn't part of my usual route. But that changed after I moved. It was a few years ago, and I had just relocated to a small rental duplex on the edge of town, tucked behind a highway ramp and wedged between an old laundromat and a string of fast food joints. Rent was cheap, and so were the neighbors, the kind of people who minded their own business unless you parked in their spot. Then they'd let you know, usually with a passive-aggressive sticky note or a few choice words shouted through a window. Life would manageable. Barely. I worked long hours at a copy print shop downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me enough to keep the lights on. After work, I usually just went home, heated up leftovers, and zoned out in front of the TV until I fell asleep. That night, a Tuesday evening in February, some was no different, except that I'd run out of paper towels, trash bags, and basic groceries, and I was too tired to drive all the way to Walmart. That's when I decided to check out the Dollar Tree a few blocks away. It was already dark outside, not late, maybe 8:45 p.m. But the winter sky made it feel like midnight. The cold air had that dry, metallic bite to it that always comes after rain. I grabbed my hoodie, slipped my keys into my pocket, and told myself I'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The parking lot was mostly empty when I pulled in. 4, maybe 5 cars scattered across the cracked asphalt. The flickering overhead lamps buzzed faintly, casting these long, distorted shadows that made the whole place look like something out of a dream or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. The front sign glowed a sickly yellow-green. Dollar Tree. Everything's $1.25. I parked close to the entrance near a cart return. The air was still, heavy, and strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Inside, the familiar scent hit me. a mix of cheap plastic, artificial lemon cleaner, and stale air. The music was faint, tinny, playing through ceiling speakers that crackled every few seconds. There was an older man at the register flipping through a flyer and a bored-looking teenage girl leaning against a display of Valentine's Day candy. She gave me a half-smile when I walked in, the kind you give out of politeness, not interest, and I nodded back. I grabbed a green cart. The front wheel wobbled like it was drunk, squealing every few feet. The sound echoed slightly, weirdly loud in the otherwise still store. There were maybe 3 other shoppers inside, a woman with a crying toddler near the school supplies, a guy covered in grease grabbing off-brand soda, and then her. She stood out immediately. She was tall, maybe in her late 30s, wearing a faded denim jacket and a red beanie that covered most of her dark hair. Her jeans were torn at the knees, not fashionably, but like they'd been through a lot. She was thin, almost too thin, and her eyes... Something about her eyes made me pause. They didn't just look tired. They looked hollow. At first I thought she was just another shopper wandering the aisles aimlessly. But then I noticed the way she was moving. She wasn't looking at items. She was watching people, subtly, patiently. Her gaze drifted from one person to another, staying just long enough to make you uneasy if you caught her doing it. I brushed it off, tried to mind my own business. I was exhausted, half zoning out anyway. I made my way toward the back of the store, the freezer section, to grab a frozen pizza and maybe a cheap pack of vegetables. The hum of the coolers was loud back there, a low mechanical growl that filled the silence. That's when I saw her again. She was in the next aisle over, standing perfectly still at the end of it, peering through the gap between 2 shelves. Her head tilted slightly, just enough to keep her face half hidden. I pretended not to notice and focused on the freezer door in front of me. Then I heard it, a dull thump. Not the kind of noise you ignore. It came from behind me near the coolers. I turned and saw movement. At first I thought she'd dropped something, but no, she was climbing. Her hands gripped the top edge of the freezer like she was pulling herself up out of a pool. Her feet scraped against the metal racks, sending cans and boxes rolling onto the floor. The sound was surreal, loud, but hollow. "What the hell?" I whispered under my breath. She hoisted herself all the way up and disappeared into the narrow gap between the freezer and the ceiling. I could hear her shifting around up there, her boots scraping against metal. "Excuse me?" I called out, not sure why I said it. Maybe instinct, maybe disbelief. For a few seconds, silence. Then her head popped over the edge. Her eyes met mine, wide, wild, and glassy. She grinned. Just a small twitch of her mouth, but it didn't look right. It looked wrong. "What are you doing up there?" I asked, my voice shaking a little. She tilted her head, blinked once, and said softly, "Just needed a second." Her voice was raspy, the kind of voice that sounds like it's been unused for days. By now, everyone else in the store had noticed. The mom pulled her child closer. The mechanic guy leaned out from his aisle, eyes wide. Even the cashier was frozen, his mouth half open in disbelief. And then, before anyone could react, she stood up. Not crouched or balanced, stood upright on top of the freezer, facing us. Then she walked 3 or 4 quick steps and jumped. Right onto my cart. The metal frame collapsed instantly. The crash echoed through the entire store. Boxes flew, cans rolled, frozen peas burst across the floor like marbles. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my ears. "Are you serious right now?" I shouted. She didn't even flinch. She stood there amidst the wreckage, brushed off her jeans, and said with a crooked grin, "Wrong cart." That's when I knew something was seriously off. "What is wrong with you?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just turned, calm as ever, and walked, no, jogged, toward the front of the store. The cashier shouted after her, "Ma'am, you can't do that." But she was already pushing through the door and out into the night. The moment she was gone, the silence came rushing back, thick, heavy, unreal. Everyone just stared at each other. The cashier, a stocky guy with a green apron, came over to help me pick up my stuff. He was shaking his head. "She's been in here before," he said quietly. "Always weird, always muttering to herself." "Does she do that every time?" I asked, trying to laugh, but my hands were still trembling. He sighed. "Not that. That's new. I bought what I could salvage and left, trying to shake the image from my mind." Outside, the parking lot was empty again. No sign of her. No sign of anyone. I loaded my things into my car, started the engine, and sat there for a minute, headlights cutting through the mist. For a moment, I thought I saw movement near the edge of the lot, but when I blinked, it was gone. I told myself I was imagining things. I drove to the gas station nearby to fill up before heading home. As I walked inside to grab a drink, I froze. Standing near the beer fridge, rifling through her pockets, hair sticking out from under that red beanie, was her. She looked up briefly, muttered something under her breath, and went back to rummaging. I didn't say a word. I backed out slowly and left. My heart didn't stop racing until I was halfway home. But the night wasn't over yet. 5 minutes later, I hit a police roadblock. Flashing lights, spike strips, the works. An officer motioned for me to pull over, so I did. I watched, confused, as several police cars suddenly sped past me, sirens blaring. Then a silver sedan flew by in the opposite lane, swerving wildly. It was her. Even through the windshield, I saw that red beanie. She was gripping the wheel, hair whipping around her face, eyes wide and wild. The cops reacted fast. The sedan hit the spike strip, tires shredded, and the car skidded off the road into a shallow ditch. They swarmed her immediately. She fought at first, screaming, clawing, kicking, but they got her under control. Her beanie fell off, and her tangled hair spilled over her face as they cuffed her. The whole thing lasted maybe a minute. I drove home in stunned silence. 2 days later, I saw the story on the local news. Her name was Angela Ditt, 39 years old. Multiple warrants, petty theft, assault, breaking and entering. She'd escaped from a psychiatric facility 2 towns over, had been missing for almost a month. They believed she'd been squatting in abandoned houses, living out of her car, and hitting random stores for supplies. That night at Dollar Tree was supposed to be just another one of her errands. They said she wasn't dangerous, just unstable. But I know what I saw in her eyes that night. It wasn't just madness. It was emptiness, like a void behind her gaze. And when she said "wrong cart," it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like she was looking for something, or someone, and I wasn't it. I still go to Dollar Tree sometimes, but never at night. And every time I pass by the freezer aisle, I can't help but glance up, just for a second, at that narrow space between the freezer and the ceiling. Because in the back of my mind, I still half expect to see a red beanie peeking over the edge, watching. I've worked at Dollar Tree for almost 4 years. I've seen people steal, argue, threaten, and once even try to return used candles. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever scared me like what happened one November night last year. It was a Tuesday. We were closing at 10 p.m., same as always. I'd pulled the short straw, which meant I was on closing duty, sweeping, restocking, locking up. It wasn't bad usually, quiet, peaceful even. The aisles always looked kind of eerie when they were empty. Bright fluorescent light, faint hum of the refrigerators, the smell of old plastic and mop water. That night, though, something just felt off from the start. My coworker Denise was supposed to stay until close, but she left early. Said she had a weird feeling and didn't want to drive home late. I laughed it off, told her I'd be fine. I'd closed plenty of nights alone. By 9:30 p.m., the store was dead. Not a single customer. I went through the usual routine, cleaned the counter, took the trash out back, and started counting the register. The old radio we kept behind the counter was playing static again, so I turned it off. The silence felt heavy. Too heavy. At 9:47, the door jingled. I looked up, annoyed mostly. We close at 10 sharp, and the last thing I wanted was a customer rushing in right before lockup. He walked in slow, a tall man, maybe mid-40s, wearing a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a black baseball cap pulled low. His face was shadowed. Not that it mattered, because something about him immediately made my stomach tighten. "Hey there," I said, trying to sound normal. "Just so you know, we're closing in about 10 minutes. He didn't answer. Didn't even nod. Just kept walking down the first aisle, hands in his pockets. I figured maybe he was one of those quiet types, the kind that hates small talk. Fine, whatever. But then I noticed something strange. He wasn't picking anything up. He wasn't even looking at the shelves. He was just walking, slowly, methodically, up one aisle, down the next, like he was counting them. Every time he reached the end of an aisle, he'd stop, turn his head toward me, and just stand there for a few seconds before moving on. I tried to ignore it, but the longer it went on, the worse it felt. My heart was beating faster, and I could feel the sweat building on my palms. By 9:55, I decided enough was enough. "Sir?" I called out. He didn't respond. "Sir, we're closing in 5 minutes." This time he stopped, mid-step, and slowly turned his head toward me. And I swear to God, his mouth curled into the smallest smile I've ever seen. Then he said in this low, gravelly voice, "I know." That's it, just that. I know. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. He turned back and walked toward the rear of the store, or the stockroom door. Now customers aren't allowed back there. There's a sign that says "Employees Only" in bold red letters. I started walking after him. "Sir, that area's restricted," but by the time I reached the end of the aisle, he was gone. Gone. The door to the stockroom was closed, and the thing is, I keep that door locked, always. The only key was on the lanyard around my neck. I just stood there, staring. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone, thinking about calling the manager or maybe even the police. But then I heard it, a sound from inside the stockroom. Soft, rhythmic. It was the sound of something tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate. I grabbed a broom handle because what else are you supposed to do, right? My brain was screaming at me to just leave, but something made me push open that door anyway. The lights in the stockroom were flickering, half the bulbs out, boxes stacked high, shelves of cleaning supplies, the faint hum of the back freezer. No one there, but the tapping continued, coming from the far corner, near the old storage cage we never used. I walked closer, my footsteps echoing against the concrete, and then I saw it. The man was crouched inside the cage, knees bent, head tilted down, tapping the floor with his fingernail. I froze. He looked up, and this time I saw his face clearly. Pale. Eyes too wide. Smile too big. There was something wrong with the way his mouth moved, like the muscles weren't connected right. "What are you doing?" I demanded. My voice cracked. He stopped tapping, tilted his head. Then, in that same gravelly whisper, he said, "Just looking for the basement." "We don't have a basement," I said. He smiled wider. "You do." Then, before I could react, he stood up and slammed the cage door shut between us. I stumbled back, dropped the broom. "Sir, you need to leave right now." He didn't move, just stood there in the shadows, grinning. And then, out of nowhere, he started humming. A low, tuneless hum. It made my skin crawl. I bolted, ran back to the front, grabbed the phone, and dialed 911. Told them there was a trespasser in the store. The dispatcher said officers were on their way. But when I turned around to check the back again, the stockroom door was open. The humming was gone. By the time the cops arrived, the place was empty. We searched the store top to bottom. Nothing. Not a single sign anyone had been there. The cage door was still closed, but there were fresh fingerprints on the metal. And on the floor beneath it, 3 small scratches, like fingernail marks. They checked the cameras the next day. The footage showed me sweeping, restocking, counting the register, all normal. Then, at 9:47, the door chimed. I looked up, said something, but the camera, it didn't capture anyone walking in. No man, no hoodie, nothing. It was just me, talking to empty air. The manager thought I'd imagined it. The cops shrugged it off. Stress, they said. Working alone too much, maybe paranoia. But here's the thing. 2 weeks later, the new cashier, Alyssa, had to close by herself. She quit after that night. Wouldn't tell us why. Wouldn't even come back to pick up her last paycheck. All she said before she left was this: don't work the closing shift, especially not if someone comes in after 9:47. Even now, if you stand in the back stock room when it's quiet, you can still hear it. Tap, 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 like fingernails against concrete, looking for a basement that isn't supposed to exist. I worked at a Dollar Tree in rural Pennsylvania for 3 years. It wasn't the worst job I've ever had. The pay sucked, the hours dragged, but the people were mostly fine, at least until the new night manager showed up. His name was Harold, though everyone called him Harry. He was in his early 50s, balding, quiet, always wore the same faded green vest that looked older than the store itself. Corporate brought him in after our old manager quit suddenly. They said he was experienced, had managed multiple stores before, great at night organization. But from day one, something about him felt wrong. It wasn't obvious, not at first. He was polite, calm, maybe too calm. His voice never rose above a murmur, no matter what was going on. Even when customers screamed at him or kids knocked over displays, he just smiled. That smile. It didn't reach his eyes. They were pale gray, almost colorless. And when he looked at you too long, it felt like he was staring through you, like he was memorizing something behind your face. The first week was uneventful, but then small things started happening. The security cameras in the back office began glitching at night, only between midnight and 3 a.m. The cleaning crew complained that someone was moving stock around after they left. And sometimes when I came in for the morning shift, I'd find the break room TV turned on, showing static. Every single time, Harry would shrug and say, "Must have been the night shift. Probably just ghosts, huh?" He'd smile, that half smile of his, but his eyes would flicker toward the stockroom door when he said it. One night, I stayed late to help with inventory. It was just me, Harry, and one cashier named Dana. At around 10:15, Harry told Dana she could clock out early, said we'd handle the rest. She looked relieved and left. Then it was just me and him. The store felt different after dark. The lights buzzed louder, the air got colder, and the aisles seemed to stretch longer than usual. I kept checking the clock, desperate for the shift to end. At 11:30, Harry said, "Can you grab me a box cutter from the back?" I left mine by the stock cage. I nodded and went. The stockroom was freezing, colder than it should have been. The overhead lights flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the walls. The cage was half open. Inside, I saw stacks of boxes and something else, a chair set dead center, facing the wall, and sitting on the chair was a green Dollar Tree vest. Not Harry's. Older, torn, faded so badly the logo was barely visible. I picked it up and something small fell from the pocket, a plastic name tag, cracked and scratched. It read, "Manager Harold Baines." My stomach dropped, because that wasn't possible. Our manager, the one I'd been working with for weeks, already had a name tag. It said Harold B. too. I backed out of the cage, heart hammering. When I turned around, Harry was standing in the doorway. "You found it," he said softly. His voice didn't sound right. It was flatter, like someone speaking from behind a wall. "Where did you get this?" I stammered. He tilted his head. "I told you. I've managed multiple stores." He smiled again, wide, unnatural. "But this one's special." "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, and I swear the lights dimmed when he moved. "Some stores close," he said. "Some get forgotten. But this one never does. It remembers everyone who's worked here. It keeps them." I backed up until I hit the shelves. My hands brushed against something cold. The box cutter. "I think I should go," I muttered. He didn't stop me, just said, When you come back tomorrow, bring coffee. I like mine black. I left. Didn't even clock out. When I came back the next morning, the assistant manager, Pauline, asked where Harry was. I told her everything. The vest, the name tag, the cage. She frowned, confused. Honey, we haven't had a manager named Harold in years. My blood went cold. What do you mean? She unlocked the filing cabinet and pulled out an old folder. Inside was a photo. An employee headshot, grainy but recognizable. It was him. Same pale eyes, same smile. Harold Baines, she said. He managed this location before I even started. Died in 2008. Heart attack. In the stockroom, I just stared. That's not possible, I whispered. He was just here last night. She gave me a pitying look. Sweetheart, no one's had a key to that stock cage in years. It's been sealed since the accident. I didn't believe her. Not until she showed me herself, took me to the back. The cage door? It was locked tight, rusted shut. The chair? Gone. Only a faint dark stain remained on the floor, old, almost hidden beneath dust and mop marks. I quit the next day. Pauline told me later that the store's motion sensors still trigger between midnight and 3 a.m., even though no one's there. And once, when a delivery driver showed up early, he swore he saw a man in a green vest standing in the doorway, smiling. Sometimes when I drive past that store late at night, I can see the lights flicker in the back window. And for just a second, it almost looks like someone's inside, checking stock, counting boxes, waiting for the next shift to start. I tell myself it's my imagination. But deep down, I know the truth. Dollar Tree doesn't just keep prices low, it keeps people. I worked overnight stock shifts at a Dollar Tree in northern Indiana for almost 2 years. Back then, I was 24, broke, and desperate to keep a steady paycheck. The job wasn't glamorous. 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., minimum wage, fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. But it paid rent and kept me from thinking too hard. The store was small and old, tucked between a pawn shop and an abandoned video rental place. We weren't even open 24 hours. Corporate made us do graveyard restocks because deliveries always arrived after midnight to avoid daytime traffic. There were usually 4 of us: me, Eddie, the assistant manager, Carla, and John, the security guard. John wasn't a real cop or anything, just a retired guy with a flashlight and a walkie-talkie who liked to talk about his Navy days. He took his job seriously, though. Said weird things sometimes like, "You know, this place has echoes. Things stay longer than they should." We used to laugh about it, until the night he disappeared. It started like any other Tuesday. We were unloading pallets of off-brand cleaning products and school supplies. The back door was propped open for ventilation because the stockroom always smelled like plastic and mildew. John was doing his usual rounds, checking the side exits, shining his flashlight along the aisles. He was old school about it, didn't trust cameras. Said machines only catch what they're allowed to see. Around 2:45 a.m., I realized I hadn't seen him in a while. Normally you could hear him whistling House of the Rising Sun down the aisles, echoing faintly through the store. That night, silence. I asked Eddie, "You seen John?" He shook his head. Probably outside smoking again. But John didn't smoke. We finished unloading the last pallet around 3:30, still no sign of him. Eddie told me to check the bathrooms just in case. I did. Empty. When I came back, Carla was pale. She pointed toward the security monitor in the back office. "You need to see this," she whispered. On the screen, one of the cameras was glitching, the one that faced aisle 8 near the seasonal decor section. The image kept flickering between static and darkness, but every few seconds it would clear just enough to show movement. Someone was standing there, tall, still, facing the shelf. Eddie leaned in, squinting. "Is that John?" I grabbed the walkie. "John, you good?" "You in aisle 8? No answer. The figure didn't move, just stood there, one arm raised slightly, fingers resting on a shelf of fake flowers. Like he was feeling for something. Eddie sighed and muttered, "All right, I'll go check." Probably messing around. He grabbed a flashlight and headed out. The monitor kept flickering as I watched him walk down the aisle, slowly, cautiously. When his beam of light hit the spot where the figure had been, the feed went completely black. Static. Then, nothing. 5 seconds later, the radio crackled. Eddie's voice came through, shaky. There's nobody here. But the floor's wet, like someone spilled something." "What kind of something?" Carla asked. He didn't respond. Then the lights overhead started to flicker, once, twice, then steadied again. Every single one of us felt it, that pulse in the air like the store itself had taken a breath. When Eddie came back, his face was pale. "There's a trail," he said. "Footprints, wet ones." Leading to the stockroom, we followed. The footprints were faint but visible, bare feet, not shoes. They led past the back shelves, past the loading bay, all the way to the emergency exit, the one that hadn't opened in years because of a broken latch. Only that night, it was open, just slightly. A freezing draft rolled in from the alley, and there, hanging from the door frame, was John's flashlight, swinging slowly back and forth. The beam pointed down at the concrete floor. Someone, or something, had drawn a circle in black marker. In the center was a word, "Stay." Police came. They searched the area, found John's vest near a dumpster half a block away. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just the vest and his ID tag. They called it a missing person case. A week later, a corporate rep showed up, installed new cameras, and told us not to talk about it. Said it would affect customer perception. I quit 2 months later. The weirdest part? Sometimes when the power flickers during storms, my phone buzzes and I get a notification from the old security system. One I shouldn't even have access to anymore. Always the same alert. Motion detected. Aisle 8. I deleted the app 3 times. It keeps reinstalling itself. If you ever find yourself in a Dollar Tree late at night and the aisles feel a little too quiet, don't ignore that feeling. Because maybe, just maybe, something's still doing rounds, whistling softly between the shelves, making sure you stay. I had been working at Dollar Tree for about a year, mostly graveyard shifts, and thought I'd seen it all. Empty aisles, loud freezers, cheap products stacked in every corner. Routine. But one night in late February changed that. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was alone in the store. The delivery truck had arrived earlier that evening, but instead of unloading, the driver had told me to just hold tight, might be a small delay. Not unusual. Sometimes shipments got rerouted or held at the warehouse. I was restocking shelves near the seasonal aisle, humming softly when I heard it. The back door creak open. I froze. No one else was supposed to be in the store, and the delivery guy had already left. I grabbed a flashlight from the cart and slowly walked toward the stockroom. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The same weak buzzing hum that made every night shift feel like it lasted forever. When I got to the stockroom, I saw a pallet in the middle of the floor. I didn't remember it being there. A brown plain shipping box. Big, unmarked, no labels, nothing. I frowned. Dollar Tree boxes always had stickers, product codes, or at least the store logo. This one had nothing. I bent down and tapped it, solid, heavy. Then I heard the softest whisper behind me. I spun around. The stockroom was empty. I told myself I imagined it. Late night, alone, eyes tired from scanning shelves. I went back to the box. It hadn't been here before, and now there were more. 3 more boxes, stacked in a neat row. I noticed something odd. Each box had faint scratches along the sides, like something inside had tried to claw its way out. I stepped back. My stomach dropped. These boxes had never been scheduled. No delivery notice, nothing in the system. I called the manager's cell. No answer. I called corporate. They told me no shipments were sent for our store tonight. I was alone. I tried to lift the top box, thinking maybe someone made a mistake. It was heavier than it looked. Much heavier. When I pried the flap open, I froze. Inside were dozens of plastic dolls, not the cute kind. Old, broken, some missing eyes, some with cracked faces. They were arranged in rows, sitting upright, all staring at me. I backed away slowly. The whispers returned, soft, unintelligible, like hundreds of voices murmuring together. I stumbled, grabbed the flashlight, and swung it around. Nothing. Just the boxes and the dolls. I tried calling 911. No signal in the stockroom. I called the manager again, still nothing. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not my footsteps. Not even heavy footsteps. Just a light tapping coming from the far corner. I froze, heart pounding. The tapping moved closer. Then a shadow passed across the stockroom wall. I couldn't see anyone. There was no one. I grabbed the heaviest broom I could find and swung it toward the noise. Nothing. The tapping stopped, and the dolls, all had turned their heads. Facing me, I ran. Out the stockroom, through the aisles, slamming into shelves. Cans rolled across the floor, boxes fell, and the fluorescent lights flickered wildly. When I reached the front door, it was locked. I didn't lock it. No one else was supposed to be here. I banged, screamed, pulled at the handle. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably seconds, it opened. I ran to my car in the parking lot, still hearing faint whispers in my ears. When I looked back, the store was dark, the boxes gone. The next day, I called the manager. Corporate said they had no record of a shipment and that the stockroom inspection found nothing unusual. I quit that night. Even now, months later, I sometimes drive past that Dollar Tree after dark. I swear I see shapes in the stockroom window. Boxes stacked neatly, rows of dolls staring back. And if I listen closely, I can hear a soft tapping, like fingernails on cardboard, counting down the hours until the next graveyard shift. I had been working at Dollar Tree for almost a year, mostly closing shifts from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. in a small, quiet town in Ohio. The store was tiny, older fluorescent lights buzzing constantly, and a little dingy in the corners. Customers were mostly teenagers looking for candy, moms grabbing last-minute cleaning supplies, or older locals stocking up on bargain toiletries. Night shifts were usually uneventful, almost meditative, stocking shelves, sweeping floors, ringing up the occasional straggler. But one night in early November, things started to feel wrong. I first noticed him around 8:30 p.m. just as I was restocking the cleaning aisle. A tall, thin man wearing a dark hoodie and baggy jeans leaned against the lamppost across the street. At first, I assumed he was just waiting for someone or smoking, but there was something off. He didn't move. He didn't fidget. He just stared. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe my eyes were tired, overworked from the fluorescent lights. Over the next week, I started noticing him almost every night. Outside, in the same spot, just watching across the parking lot, closer than before. Occasionally lingering near the dumpsters like he was waiting for the doors to open. I mentioned it to Linda, the day manager. She shrugged. "Don't worry, small town. People like to stare. Nothing weird about it, but my gut said different." One Thursday night, I was alone in the store. The previous 2 employees had called out, so it was just me. Around 9:15 p.m., as I restocked the seasonal aisle, I heard a soft thump near the front door. I froze. It wasn't the jingle of a customer entering. It was deliberate, controlled, quiet. I peeked outside. Hoodie guy. Closer now, standing near the corner of the building. No expression, just watching. I locked the doors early and tried calling the police. They said they would send a car by but couldn't do anything unless someone was in danger. Then the inside store incidents began. Boxes I had just placed on shelves were slightly moved. Nothing knocked over, just shifted. I started hearing soft whispers, almost like breathing, when I walked through the toy aisle. At first I blamed the air vents, but then I noticed it. Shadows flickering in the corner of my vision, moving just out of reach. By 9:45 I was terrified. I had a broom in hand, flashlight in the other, and my heart racing like a drum. I checked the security monitor. Everything appeared normal. until I looked closer. A shadow slipped between aisle 7 and 8. Something crouched behind the end cap of the snack section. Every time I moved toward it, it vanished. At 9:55 p.m., the lights flickered violently. I froze mid-step. When they steadied, I realized he was inside the store, not just near the front, somewhere between the seasonal aisle and the stockroom. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" No response. I edged toward the stockroom, trying to stay calm. And then I heard soft footsteps following me, keeping pace. I spun around. No one. My panic rose. I grabbed the office phone, but the line was dead. I reached for my cell, no signal. The shadows moved again. I could feel eyes on me. Every aisle I passed, I swore I saw him tilt his head, silently observing, waiting. I finally made it to the front counter, pressed the silent alarm under it. Just in case. Then I heard it, the front doors rattling. Someone was trying to open them from the outside. I ran to my car in the parking lot, throwing open the door, keys shaking in my hand. Hoodie guy was there, standing just a few feet away, not running, not hiding, just standing. I started the car, fumbling with the gear shift. Then I saw it, a black sedan appearing out of nowhere, engine running, parked across the lot. Inside, him, watching, smiling faintly, unreadable. I floored it, tires squealing. He didn't move. The sedan followed, slowly at first, then accelerating to match me. I called 911 from my phone, hands trembling so badly I could barely press the buttons. The dispatcher instructed me to stay in my car and keep moving. The chase lasted maybe 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. I turned down a side street to lose him. For a second, I thought I had succeeded. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, there he was, the sedan still behind me, headlights bright in the darkness. I swerved onto a gas station lot, panicked, and ran inside. The clerk called the police, who arrived minutes later. When the lights of the patrol cars swept across the lot, the car and the man were gone. No footprints, no sign of the sedan. I quit the very next week. I told my co-workers it was personal reasons, but the truth is, I've never felt safe inside a Dollar Tree since. Years later, when I drive past at night, I swear I see shadows moving behind the glass, a flicker of a hoodie, a tilt of the head, and sometimes I can hear a faint, slow tap, tap, tap in my mind, like footsteps pacing the aisles, just out of reach, waiting for the doors to open again. It was late January, freezing outside, and the kind of night that made your breath fog up the air around you. I had recently picked up another closing shift at Dollar Tree, mostly because I needed extra cash and because it was easy work. Check out customers, restock shelves, mop floors. I was alone that night. The store was quiet, eerily quiet, even for closing hours. I started with the back aisles, straightening items, scanning shelves, the fluorescent lights flickering softly above. Normally, I felt a sense of comfort in the monotony, the predictable hum of the store. That night, I didn't. Around 9:15 p.m., I heard it, a faint scraping sound coming from aisle 6, the cleaning products. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I walked toward the noise, flashlight in hand. Nothing, just shelves, just empty bottles, cans, and dust motes dancing in the light. Then I noticed something strange, the products on the shelves. Some had shifted slightly. Not like someone had touched them, it was subtle. But there was a pattern. Each shelf seemed rearranged in a way that almost mimicked human posture. A bottle leaning, a box tilted, as if something were crouching, stretching, or turning. I laughed nervously. Store settling, I whispered to myself. Gravity, nothing more. I moved on to the snack aisle. Another soft scrape. I spun around. Nothing. Then I swore I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, something large and dark moving between the shelves. Not fast, slow, deliberate. I pointed my flashlight at it. Nothing. Just the aisles. Empty. By 9:40, I started to feel a weight in the air, like the store itself was watching me. The fluorescent lights flickered more violently now, casting long, warped shadows across the floor. Every shadow looked wrong. Too long, too angular, like something crouched just beyond the edges. I tried to shake it off, just tired, just my imagination. But then the whispers started, soft, barely audible, coming from all directions. No words, just murmurs, low, unplaceable voices. I ran to the stockroom to grab the phone. It was gone. Not unplugged, not stolen, just gone. I tried my cell. No signal. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to drown out everything except the whispers, which were growing louder, sharper, more deliberate. I backed into aisle 10. The cleaning supplies, the shadows moved. They weren't attached to any object. They weren't my own. They were alive. A broom toppled off the shelf. I jumped. A stack of paper towels unrolled itself, forming a humanoid shape standing in the middle of the aisle. I screamed. It moved, not quickly but deliberately. Fingers stretching, long and thin, formed from the stacked boxes and bottles. It leaned closer, tilting its head in a curious, almost playful way, as if studying me. I bolted. I ran through the aisles, but they weren't the same. The layout had changed. Shelves warped. Products shifted. The aisles stretched impossibly long. Every time I tried to head toward the exit, it was just out of reach. I could hear footsteps behind me. Not mine, not human. Soft, dragging, deliberate. Every time I looked back, nothing. Finally, I made it to the front. The doors were there, glass, normal, familiar. I ran, threw open the doors. The parking lot was empty, silent. Cold night air hit me like a wall. I looked back. The store looked normal. No shadows, no whispers, nothing moved. But I could still feel it. Something alive waiting inside. I never returned to that Dollar Tree after dark, not even in the daytime. Sometimes when I drive past, I see movement in the aisles. Shadows that shouldn't exist. Boxes slightly tilted as if watching. And if I listen closely, I can still hear the whispers. Soft, low, curious, hungry. The aisles are alive, and they remember me.